morning, everybody. This is Kayla Isler at NABPAC. We're hearing a little bit of feedback on the line, so hopefully we have everybody muted. So before I begin, I just want to provide a little bit of administrative updates for everybody. I hope everybody is safe and healthy and is continuing to navigate during this challenging time. We do have all of the lines muted to help with the productivity of the call today. As many of you are accustomed to, for questions, we have our Slido app that we sent out in the email today for you to be able to utilize in asking your questions. You can also utilize the chat box to ask your questions, and we will be sure that our presenter, Laurie Richards, gets those questions. I also wanted to let folks know that the session today is being recorded. As soon as we have the recording, we will post with a recap of the call in the next couple of days on our website. So at NABPAC, we know Laurie Richards as the communication expert who helps us increase our PAC contributions, mobilize grassroots efforts, manage our champions, and communicate our message up the ladder and all over the hill. But in other industries, Laurie is also recognized as a crisis communication expert. She works with manufacturing companies when product failures happen, construction companies during accidents, chemical plants in cases of catastrophes, and communities during natural disasters. Preferably, Laurie works with organizations before a crisis. Today, Laurie is here to help us navigate through this pandemic and this crisis and come through as the best that we can. So I'm very pleased to turn this over to Laurie, and thank you, Laurie, for being with us today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be able to help you guys. I'm just sorry that I have to with all of this craziness going on. It's a difficult time for everyone, and you guys have a very specific role that you play, and a lot of this can really throw us into a tailspin that makes it really, really difficult to do our job. So it's the perfect time, unfortunately, to be talking about crisis communication. And throughout this session, you'll get several tips that you can use to not only engage your audience and increase that engagement with your audience, whomever that is, with your stakeholders, but increase productivity, stop problems from happening, and make sure that you're in the meantime maintaining and growing even that morale that you have with your team, with your champions, even with your staff and your peers up and down the line. So that's what this is really about. You're going to get tips on how to position yourself, tips on what to say and what not to say. You'll get some things that you should think about that maybe you haven't thought about just yet. If you were putting together a strategic crisis communication plan that was happening before a crisis ever happened, you'd have a lot of time to make some of these decisions. But unfortunately, you've been thrown into the deep end, and it's time for you to really take a look at some of these things. But the things that you're going to look at today will help make sure that you're on the right track. Even though maybe we've lost a little control on the road a little bit, you'll be able to pull that back in and make sure that you don't lose control over this. So let's take a look at Abigail. I am not getting control on this. Oh, there we go. Maybe it's just taking a little bit of time to respond. Let's take a look at, first of all, what you're concerned that this is going to cost you, and what a crisis like this can cost. And Abigail, you have a poll that is available to them. Do you want to put that up and maybe walk them through how they can respond to that poll? She's working on putting that up for you. What you guys want to do is make sure that you have available to you there you are. Can someone walk us through that? I'm not hearing any sound. So Abigail, if you're talking, then I think your microphone is off. You want to share with them the technical side of this, how to get to this?
Active poll.
Here's what it says. But I'm not familiar with this particular technology. So you can see what it says. It says go to slido.com, put in a hashtag crisis 2020, and then answer these questions. What is your biggest concern about navigating this crisis? And you can choose two. And then what we'll do is we'll take a look at what this says as we go along throughout this session this morning. And then we'll give you some results on this and make sure that you see results as a whole as well. Abigail, if you could shut that screen down and then bring me back to
Crisis 2020.
the PowerPoint, I'd appreciate it. I'm not sure. Oh, I have S. Sheridan. There you are. That tells me that you're probably not muted. If you're moving, if you're moving and making noise, you're going to show up on the screen. Just an FYI, if you haven't combed your hair today or done done your makeup. So let's talk about that cost a little bit. As the other thing that you guys want to do is in your chat box, make sure your chat is on, because throughout this session today, the webinar, you're going to be asked to add some things to that chat to answer some questions so that I can see what are you guys thinking about? What are you talking about here? And what are you worried about here? So we'll come back to that specific cost, but let's talk a little bit about the cost that other people are seeing here. Here you go. At the executive level, this is a survey that was done in 2016 by Deloitte Touche. And at the executive level, here's what they were concerned about. 73% said they were concerned about their reputation, that after a crisis, that people weren't going to look up to their organization the way that they currently did. They were afraid of the rumors that were going to be started. With social media, we cannot downplay the value of having social media on our side. So how do we control those rumors? They were concerned about operational issues, making sure that things get done, and obviously concerned about financial performance. Now, I get that a good share of you are not executive C-suite folks, but a lot of these are things that are probably on your list too. There are some other things on that poll, so make sure that you're going to that and we'll see what you guys think overall. But all of these are important to you as well. Your reputation, the reputation of your organization, the reputation that you have not only with eligibles, but with your team members, with your peers, with the folks upstairs and on the hill. So that's important. Making sure that we control those rumors a little bit and making sure we get things done and have some financial performance. So all of these are probably important too, but just to compare your responses to the responses of folks at the executive level, I think that's important. A 2016 survey also said that 80% of these executives, this is all of them, folks, 80% of them said, I wish we had communicated better. Because it's not the crisis that will kill you. It's the communication you have during that crisis. The crisis is going to happen, and some people are going to come out of this smelling like a rose, and other people are not because they can't navigate their boat through this crisis. So we've got to figure out how to do that, how to make that happen. Let's talk about your fundraising. When it comes to fundraising, here are the 5 pieces you're going to take a look at today. 1, making sure that you assign the responsibility. 2nd, identifying your specific stakeholders so that we're not missing anybody, choosing your spokesperson, crafting the right message, and then delivering it. So you want to make sure that it is someone's job to manage this crisis. It is someone's responsibility. Now, that might be yours, or it might be someone else that you say, you know what, Champion Bob, your job is to monitor what's going on in regard to this crisis and how we're responding to this. So make sure that you're actually assigning that responsibility. Then you have to choose your spokesperson. Now, as you do this, as you look in your chat here, folks, type in there for us, who are you using as your spokesperson to deliver your message during the crisis? And you guys, you don't have to use names. In fact, names for the most part won't be helpful, but instead tell us, is it you? Is it a vice president? Is it the CEO? Is it one of your champions? Are you relying on peer-to-peer? Write down in the chat box, tell us what's going on. Who are you choosing as your spokesperson? I'll just watch while you guys add some things in there. Who are you choosing as your spokesperson? I got a CEO there. Senior VPs. Okay, department corporate leaders. Good. Who else are you choosing? Not sure yet. Okay, we'll talk about that. Congressional relations. Good. Are your PAC chair, senior VPs? Good. A lot of not sure, some government affairs. A lot of not sures. Wow. Okay. That's good for us to know because it's something that you really want to think about. I'm going to keep watching these as they come in. We're seeing a lot of the PAC chair and the government affairs person in there. You really want to think hard about who your spokesperson should be. Your spokesperson should be, first of all, someone with authority. Now, that does not mean your CEO. If your CEO is not a contributor, that is not a good person to use as your spokesperson through this because the CEO has got 112 other things on their mind during this crisis, and you are not one of them if that person hasn't written a check yet, if that person hasn't checked off to be a contributor. So I'm not sure that I could recommend using that person as your spokesperson during this time. You want to think about someone whose authority is something maybe like a PAC manager, but also think really long and hard about peer to peer because your peers have authority that you don't have. Your eligibles peers have authority that you may not have. As much as you try to be, you're not one of them. So I'd be looking for someone, for instance, who maybe is part of the rumor mill at that level. And the reason, but is a contributor and as a contributor because I want someone who, when they talk, people listen. You want someone who, when they open their mouths and have an opinion and say, vote yes, their peers flock behind them and vote yes as well. And when we're in a situation like this, there's a huge division between me and everybody else. And if I'm one of your eligibles and I'm working from home and I'm teaching my kids and I'm trying to do my job and I'm just concerned that I'm going to lose my job because of this crisis, or I'm concerned because a parent is sick or whatever's going on, the minute the voice from on high comes down, I'm thinking, I got better things to do. See, the challenge today is not reaching those eligibles, it's connecting with them, it's engaging with them. And that means that the person you choose needs to be someone that they relate to. So the more peer-to-peer you can do, the better off you're going to be with this particular angle. You want someone who has a certain amount of authority. So maybe it's a department head, maybe it's a manager, but it's someone that people listen to. You want someone with credibility. Now, what that means is that you want someone that when they talk about a specific issue, people believe them. And you have to watch this one. And if you've been in some of my other seminars, you've heard me say this. Just because the guy fixes cars and you need your car fixed does not mean that you trust the guy who fixes cars. A lot of us who can't fix cars don't trust mechanics. And it's not because the mechanic doesn't know what they're doing, it's because we think that mechanic wants something from us. So here you are, you're the PAC manager, you understand your PAC better than anybody else. You got a government affairs person over here, they understand what's going on in the government better than anybody else. But everybody outside this beltway, they don't trust us. They don't trust Washington. They don't trust what's going on in Washington. And now you, the PAC manager, and your government affairs people are just two more people from Washington. So you need somebody who has not just the knowledge, which yes is important, but they need that credibility. The people hearing it need to believe that they can relate to this person and this person knows what they're talking about. That's why when you watch all the politicians and all their fundraising, that's why they bring in Joe Schmo from Kokomo, who got something great from one of these candidates. That's why they bring in someone that look at and they hold this person up as, isn't this interesting? They're voting for me. This is one of your peers and they're voting for me. So this goes down to that whole, not your peer, but their peer. This is a critical piece in choosing that spokesperson. That means going out and finding other people from your company that believe in what you're doing as a PAC and using them as the mouthpiece, asking them, what do you think? How would you do this? What would make you make this difference? And then creating statements for them that they can put their name on that obviously they are authentically comfortable with and ethically comfortable with sharing their ideas with, even though, you know how it is, sometimes you write a statement and you say, Bob, you know, can you approve this? Can you endorse this? Can we attribute this to you? Do that, but do it with the lower down you go on the totem pole in terms of peers, till you get to a point where these folks are truly peers to the people you're asking for money from. That's who you want to talk to. And this is not just when you're asking for money, folks. I saw the results from your survey that say a lot of you are going to put off asking for money for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, even the end of the year. And sometimes that's a good idea and sometimes it's not. I mean, the reality is, folks, and some of you, I can see the wheels turning already. The reality is, if you don't ask for that money, someone else is, and you may not like the results of that. So you want to think long and hard before you set a specific time saying, well, we're not going to ask for any money for 30 days. I don't know about you, but all I got to do is think about opening my email, and I've got 150 emails in there asking me to spend my money. And the likelihood is that I'm more likely to spend my money with that company than someone else because they were there and they asked. So you got to think really hard and strategically before you decide that you're not going to ask for contributions until the end of this year. So really think hard about that. But when it comes to your spokesperson, don't rely on the traditional. Don't rely on, well, we've always used this senior VP. That's great. But don't forget to dig a whole lot deeper, especially in times of crisis. When something goes wrong, we want to know that people like me are answering. People like me are making the decisions I would make. And that's very different depending on our level economically, geographically, philosophically. So you're looking for someone who is a peer more often than not. Obviously, they need to have the knowledge and they need to have the passion. Again, if you're thinking about using your CEO and you happen to work for one of those companies, and I know there are several of them out there, that your CEO does not contribute, that's not the person I'd be going to. I want the CEO to tell me our company's, going to be fine and we really appreciate your help. And I want them doing a lot of the morale building stuff, but I don't want them talking about PAC because not even they are walking the talk in regard to PAC. So really look for that and think hard about who your spokesperson is. If you're wondering about this, you guys, I can help. And one of the things you'll see toward the end of this is that I'm volunteering to give you guys a free complimentary 30-minute crisis communication strategy session. So if you are still not sure about who to use, or you go back and you meet with your team and you're still not sure about who to use, get with me on the phone, make an appointment with me, and we will figure out who your best sources are for this, because this is critical. If you use the wrong spokesperson, you're in trouble. Think about this. Right now, and this should not, please don't make this into a political statement, okay? But let's talk about what's been happening now with this pandemic, and think about who you're listening to and why you're listening to them. And the reality is they probably are checking all the marks here. If Dr. Fauci is one of the people you're listening to, which research says a lot of people are, he has authority, he's got a position, he's a doctor, so that gives him authority as well. He has credibility, that adds to his credibility. He speaks with great knowledge and he speaks with great passion. If that's the case, you're getting someone who checks all of these boxes. Make sure that your spokespeople check all the boxes. And notice that I said spokespeople, because in some cases, some of you are going to have more than one person that fills this need, and you're going to want to take advantage of that, and you're going to want to tailor it based on more than just one person as a spokesperson, but using a different one for each audience, as it were. Trying to change my slide here again. Here we go. Let's talk about crafting that message. Crafting the message is really important. Think about this. Let's do this. Think about the coverage that we've seen with the pandemic, and go back to your chat box, everybody, and let's see what you guys have to say. When it comes to delivering the message itself and delivery, write some responses in the chat box about what's working. Not just the spokesperson, but the style and the information. What works to really connect with you, to really engage with you, to really make sure that you have what you need out of the information. Let's see what you guys come up with here. Let's watch the chat box a little bit. Tell us what works for you in terms of the message and or the delivery of the message. We'll talk about what these on this list mean. Go into your chat box. Tell us, what is it about the message that works? Relatable, good. What else? I feel like we're getting a lot of question marks. Clear, concise, to the point. Not a lot of gibberish in there, okay? Results driven, good. That's about the focusing on the future, specifics. Not sometime down the road, but June 10th or whatever, whatever it is. Attention getting, good. So high energy, personalized, it's just for me. How many of you are checking if you're in Virginia, Maryland, DC, you're checking the numbers every single day? I know I am. When it applies to me directly. Action, straightforward, empathetic, good. Okay, one of the things to note here, and I know not everyone has responded, keep adding to these because they're really valuable and they're really interesting for all of us to see. Notice nothing in here said self-serving. Not in one of them. And I'm guessing transparency, good. I'm guessing that when you think about the coverage of this, you are not responding to the self-serving. In fact, anyone or any company that is going in and making it seem like they're doing it for the publicity, solely for the publicity, my guess is you and I are saying, hey, that's not okay. So if you go in and you appear to be self-serving, you will lose. This is where your reputation will be sullied. This is where people will say, the only reason you did that was because you knew you were going to be on Facebook and everybody was going to be paying attention. That's the only reason you did any of this. And that's not going to work for you long term. So it's really important that your message itself, is crafted in such a way that it connects and that it's relatable, that I'm going to use somewhat transparent because I'm a person who really believes that you don't have to tell everything, but what you tell has to be true, it has to be honest, it has to be authentic. So transparency is one of those words that can be highly misinterpreted. Some people see transparent as, this is me from head to foot, completely open to everything. Other people say you got to be a little careful about what you put out there, but it does need to be authentic. It needs to be honest. We shouldn't lie to people, shouldn't be misleading, all of those pieces. So want to make sure that your message is all of these. And this is so important that we are going to spend a little bit of time on each of these because without it, you can easily miss some of these pieces. So the first one is empathetic. And this is one that in the seminar that you guys had last week, you talked a little bit about this one. And that is the language that's here for you is in this time of crisis. So you're saying, I get where we're coming from. We're all in this together. I hope you and your family are doing well. I wish you the best. Like you, we're feeling the pressure as well. There are frustrations. We're all trying to find our balance. All of those are things that are saying it's we. This is all of us together. I get that this is a really tough time. It's not going in saying, you're not doing anything else at home today, and I know you're sitting at home, so buy our product. That would not go well. That would not go over well. So you don't want to do that. Again, notice that at no time did anyone say self-serving. The reason that I'm putting this out there to you folks again is because you really want to take a hard look at the information that you're putting on the web about your pack. If it feels self-serving, then they're going to shut you off. So if this says, this will help us reach our goals. Imagine that you got today a text from a presidential candidate that said, we're trying to meet our goals. My guess is that a lot of us would say, hey, look, I got bigger problems than you reaching your goals. Instead, it needs to have what you guys mentioned before. It needs to be relatable. It needs to be something that is specific to me. It needs to be something that addresses my needs, especially in time of crisis. People are especially sensitive to this. So while you might be able to get away with it in another time, not recommended, but you might be able to get away with it. Right now, people are ultra sensitive. And if it doesn't serve them, we are very much in survival mode right now. So your message has to come back to that. So that means acknowledging that people are struggling, acknowledging that this is scary, acknowledging that there's a challenge out there. So make sure that you're empathetic, that you're understanding that this is a tough time for everyone. You also want to make sure that you are specific. And this is an area that a lot of people miss out on because they're afraid to make specific promises that they can't keep. And what that means is that you want to talk about things that are going to happen on Friday, not later this week. At 2 o'clock, not sometime tomorrow. There are going to be 3, not some. Right now, again, because of a crisis, what happens is everybody does go into that survival mode. And when they can't get realistic answers, in the absence of information, they will make it up. And when we are not specific about what we're talking about, it creates another level of stress. The minute we say on Friday, the minute we say at 2 o'clock or 3 instead of some, it gives us a certain amount of comfort to know that, first of all, that our spokesperson is decisive and they're actually leading. And that's really important. But it also tells us that I know where to go next. So make sure that you are as specific as possible when you're doing this. Make sure that you're offering resources. This is a great time to not only remind people where your website is, remind people where to get forms they can fill out, any kind of a form. You want to assume that they have forgotten everything you told them. There's a lot of research that indicates that in our brain, the minute we get stressed, our memory goes down, as does our logic. So what happens is we're all really stressed and we can't remember where that form is. Even though you've told us 112 times, we don't know where it is. So show us again, give us links, tell us the specific people to talk to, give us phone numbers, give us emails, answer your phones, or tell them when your office hours are. I know that you're trying to homeschool children and you're trying to take care of kids during this and you're trying to take care of parents or other people in your lives, and you're trying to get work done and get phone calls made, and you're spending a ton of time doing video emails and webinars like this. So tell them when your office hours are. I'll be available in the office from 12 to 2, Tuesday and Thursday, or every day between 3 and 5, or every day between 10 and 12, or whatever. So the more detailed, specific information you can give them and the more resources you can give them, the better. There was a piece on the news just this morning that talked about how people with alcohol and drug problems are falling off the wagon very, very quickly. So now is the time to remind them, if this is appropriate for you, remind them of those services, remind them to go to HR, remind them, here's the link to HR if you need that, or if you're worried about finances, click here to talk to the financial advisor from our organization, whatever it is. Again, you want to appear generous, you want to appear open, and you want to be authentic, not just appear authentic, but you want to be authentic. So provide as much for resources as you can. Make sure that you sound decisive. Make sure that you sound like a leader or whomever your spokesperson is. That means showing that generosity and showing that concern. Notice the language here. You can be assured that we're keeping things going. We're on the job. We're continuing to. We're monitoring, tracking, following, staying in contact. All of this language is meant to sort of assuage your organization. Again, this needs to be authentic, so please don't do it if it's not. But you want to tell them, we're still on the job here. The election is likely not going to change. There's going to be a November election. There are very few people who say differently. So, and until we hear differently, we sort of have to keep on the track that it's going to happen. So you want to talk about how, it's so important to show, to demonstrate support for the candidates that we want to make sure are reelected. We are continuing to monitor this. We're closely watching this, and we will keep you informed. Anything you can do to assuage that audience is going to be in your greatest advantage here. So be decisive, at the same time, be realistic. Do not make promises that you can't keep. It will work against you. And always make sure that you identify how to reach you and your team in case they need you. And as we mentioned, the office hours. This piece here, the next steps, if you don't write anything else down today, make sure you're writing this because it's really important for you. In a crisis, again, it's about calming people, making them feel comfortable and confident that things are being taken care of. If you watch, in fact, I noticed this with the pandemic. My parents are in South Dakota and I'm in Northern Virginia, and very different numbers, but still very, very scary numbers. And the other day, the governor came on and she said, from this day forward, the new numbers of the day will be released at 9 a.m. Made all the difference in the world to me because I'd been spending all day watching numbers, watching numbers, watching numbers. Please tell me that I'm not the only person that was doing this. Um, so instead, as soon as she said the new numbers will be released at 9 a.m. every day, my worry was over. Instead of constantly having the television on and looking on the internet and checking the numbers on my phone, instead of doing that all day, I check it once a day because at 9 a.m., that's the number. And it doesn't change until tomorrow at 9 a.m. And it absolutely lifted this weight on me. You want to do the same thing for for your folks. If you watch television, anytime there is a crisis, somebody gets kidnapped, and the police officers will be out there, and it'll be the police officer, and it'll be a detective, and it'll be half a dozen other people who are have authority, they have credibility, all those things. They make a connection. They'll have those folks out there, and then one of them, before it's over, will say, if they're good at it, they will say something like, Friday at 2 o'clock, we'll be back here to answer any questions that you have and to update you on any new information we may have. Now, notice there's no promise that we will know this information by Friday at 2 o'clock. You do not promise what you can't. So don't tell them we will have more information by Friday at 2 because you don't know that. But what you will do is I will be available on Friday at 2 o'clock. I'll be available to answer your questions. And if we have new information, we will share that at that time. You might tell them the minute we get new information, we will share that and we'll be here Friday at 2. So please don't just say to them, the minute we have more information, we'll share it with you. It's just too unknown. It's just one more stressor in a position, where we are stressed out. So instead, you tell them with or without new information, we're going to be here Friday at 2 o'clock or Thursday at 1 o'clock or whatever your time is. We are going to reach out to you no matter what. Also tell them things like the specific media to watch. For the most updated information, look at our website. I notice it in Northern Virginia, and a lot of you do as well. And I do a lot of work for the government. And the government will tell you, listen to WTOP. And every station out there, I suspect, has the information about whether or not the government's going to be shut down during a blizzard, but their official one is WTOP. And what they're saying is, if you get conflicting information, if you wonder, WTOP is the official place to go. So make sure that your audience knows that. Go to our website, here it is, for the latest information on. It will be updated every day at 2 o'clock. And that means if there are no updates, there are no updates, but you've told them this is the official place to go for information so they don't have to worry. This is really about connecting with that audience because in good times you should communicate, but in bad times you must, or you'll get bad results. So let's talk about the delivery of this. You know what, even in the meantime, Abigail, if you will put up the second poll there, it's a poll on what you guys are using, what media you're using to deliver your message. Take a look at that poll. And again, let her get that up here. The question is, what tools are you using most as a way to reach out to your eligibles? So we'll come back to the results on this poll specifically, but here's the other poll. Again, join at slido.com and use hashtag crisis 2020. And then pick out 2 of these that you are using on a regular basis or you're planning to use throughout this crisis as your biggest ones. And you can put me back on the PowerPoint, if you will, Abigail, and then we'll come back and look at both of those responses in just a moment here. And just an FYI, folks, we're going to be able to finish this portion of it and open it up to Q&A at about 11:45. So if you've got questions, hold on to those and we'll go from there. Okay, let's talk about this, the delivery. When you think about delivering this, you've chosen your spokesperson, you've created your message, you've crafted that just the way you want it to be. Now it's time to deliver it. You not only want to think about the media, but you want to think about the tone that you're going to set. There are some people that the tone they want to set is going to be, tough. This is the way it's going to be. Other people more, a little more soft spoken, a little more passive in the way that they're going to handle this. In a crisis, again, a big part of this is creating that comfort of your audience and making them feel like there's hope. That's a huge part of it. Making sure they feel like there's hope, giving them options, giving them resources. So here are the ones that you really want to think about. Make sure that it's decisive. Make sure that in delivering it, that you sound decisive, that you are realistic, that you're providing resources, that you're specific, that you have that open door, and that you have these next steps. What that means for you is, in addition to these things, you want to think about the tone you're setting. Do you want your leaders to come off as more compassionate? Do you want them to come off as tough? Do you want them to come off as innovative? Uh, think to yourself, if you think about the message that's delivered and the people, the tone for your pack, for your department, even for your organization, take a moment for yourself and write down 3 words that you would like people to say about you, your organization, your department when this is all over. Put those in the chat. Think about what you want people to say about you, your department, your organization when this is all over. 3 words you'd like them to say about you. Available. Good. What else? What do you want people to say? That they had our back. Yep. We're watching the news today and I see reassuring, helpful, trustworthy. As a customer, we may feel like Amazon has been there for us, but it sounds like I got useful there. It sounds like the employees are feeling less like that. And it says here they're on top of it. I want people to say they're on top of it. Amazon is a good example, and this is not a good or bad vote to Amazon. It's an observation, not a judgment. What we're seeing with that is we're seeing that Amazon, in its actions, whether or not it was its intention, whether or not they even had a strategy, I don't know. I simply don't have the information on that. But what it looks like is that Amazon was absolutely in their actions focused on the customer. That if you and I want something from Amazon, we can still order it from Amazon. And yes, they're short on toilet paper and paper towels, isn't everyone? But they're going to get to it and they're going to get it to us. So Amazon was focused on us as customers. What we're hearing now is that they were less focused on their employees. Good, bad, or indifferent, true or false, that's what we're hearing in the news today. And interestingly, what we hear tends to be what we believe. And that's true for your organization as well, which is why managing those rumors is so critical. Getting out there and delivering your message before someone else does. In the absence of information, people will make it up. They will fill in the holes and you will lose. And you can't afford for that to happen, which is why you need to be out there sharing your message. Okay. I'm hearing caring and competent in the chat. So think about those words that you want people to say about you, your organization, and your department, your division, your government affairs, whatever it is, your pack, and then build the bridge. How do I get them to believe that we're caring and compassionate? How do I get them to believe that they're responsive? How do I get them to believe that they're on top of things? How do I get them to believe that they're taking care of business? Because if this is what you really want them to say, your job is to build the bridge. How do I get my customers, and all of my stakeholders to believe each of these pieces? One of the things we didn't talk about here specifically was stakeholders. And you want to think long and hard about who your stakeholders are. And there's not a slide about this, but you want to think long and hard about who your stakeholders are. Your stakeholders are going to be more than just your eligibles. Write down who you think your stakeholders are, folks. Put in the chat who you think your stakeholders are. I know you're all going to say eligibles, so is there anybody else? Who else is a stakeholder for you guys? Members and potential members. Okay, good. Employees, legislators, patients, good. Lobbying team, yes. Who else is on that list? Just watching the chat here. Consultants and vendors, thank you. Customers, legislators, regulators. You guys are getting them. And if you saw something on that chat list that wasn't on yours as a stakeholder, time to take a second look. Your stakeholders are not only your eligibles, the constituencies that our company and our organization serve. Yes. Your stakeholders that you want to take care of are not only your eligibles, they're also your eligibles families. Because now they're making the decision of whether or not to put a check in that box that you can take X number of percent of their paycheck. But now they're going home and they're talking to their spouse and their families about it, and they're wondering how they're going to pay the bills because they're not going to get a paycheck. So all of a sudden things look very, very different, or they're concerned about keeping their jobs. So now you not only have to think about the eligible as your stakeholder, but you got to go to the next level and think about the eligible's family. And not just the eligible, but the people who are already giving, and then the people who could give. And what about the folks upstairs? Your stakeholders are also the folks upstairs in the C-suite. Your stakeholders are lobbyists. They are your government affairs folks. They are the people, I'm sitting here with a coffee cup with a logo on it. They're the people who print stuff like these because you had a fly-in scheduled next week, or the week after that, or the month after that, and now you're not going to order these thermoses for them, or the briefcases, or the portfolios. And so they're all sitting back going, wait a minute, how do I know where I'm going to get my paycheck? And now next year, you're going to go back and you're going to ask for a rush order, or in August, you're going to call and ask for a rush order, and they're going to be part of your stakeholders. They're going to be people who are saying, should I, shouldn't I? What should I do? Your constituents, your obviously the fundraisers on the Hill, there are people that you have to think about. So you have to think about, how do I reach all of these audiences? Your audience just went from eligibles to a much greater audience that you have to make sure that you're reaching out to. And you might have to craft your messages just a little bit different because you have to take care of some of those other audiences. I have a couple of clients who I've been trying to reach out to that haven't gotten back to me on some business. And so I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, is this business going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Is it going to happen the same way? And, doing what I do, you can imagine that a lot of the business just walking out the door. So now that makes a difference in how I feel when they ask me for a favor, of course. And so I'm a stakeholder for some businesses. And you want to think about all of these pieces and how they come together and who you should be reaching out to, because every person you talk to then talks to someone else. And you got to make sure you're sending the right message to each of those. Let's take a look at one last thing here, and then we're going to take a look at your responses for the polls. Here we go. Choosing your media. Let's go back, if you will. Abigail, can you show us the survey results for choosing your media? Let's see what you guys had to say about this. Thank you. We said, in good times you need to communicate, but in bad times you really must. And the challenge here through a crisis like this is not going to be reaching your audiences. It's going to be engaging with your audiences. It's going to be actually getting their attention and then getting them to take action. Ooh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay, you guys were asked to choose two things. Any idea how many people responded to this one, Abigail? Do you hear me sighing, like as a crisis communication person? I'm going, oh, this is horrible. So how many people responded to this? Can you tell me?
18 for this first one.
Okay, if you haven't yet voted on this, be sure to do this, and then let's talk about what this says. First of all, I want you to think about how many emails you're getting. And are you opening them? Unless you've asked for them, are you opening them? The reason that you're being asked this is because typically we're getting a lot more emails today than we ever were. And it's because we're not seeing each other just down the hall. Instead of sending one email, I'm sending 5 because I'm not walking by that person in the hall. So now you've got the competition of not only your email, but you've got the competition of everybody else's emails times 5 of what you had a week ago or 2 weeks ago or the 1st of March. And the reality is, unless you're doing a hell of a job on those emails, you're just not going to break through. And yeah, there are probably 2 or 3 of you out there who are getting some good results on those. I got to tell you, you got to find some other ways, folks. We got to find some other ways to reach these. Now, I like that you're doing the virtual large events. You can't turn the television on or go on the internet without it showing you how somebody's having a virtual happy hour or whatever else. In fact, just today I sent Michaela an email and I said, let's have virtual lunch next week. And the reason I did that is because, you know, we're going to eat lunch. She's going to be in her home office. I'm going to be in mine, but we might as well have a chat and a glass of tea while we're doing it. You know, just an opportunity to touch base. If you haven't engaged in the use of virtual like this, where your camera is on, folks, you need to do it. I know there are a lot of you out there that, oh, I don't like to be on camera. Sorry, this is life. If you can get dressed and put your makeup on and comb your hair and put clothes on that make you look decent at the office, you will look decent on camera. Today, we're in a world where we don't expect it to be highly produced. I mean, you see me sitting here in my office. I had to close my shades a good share before we started up here. Nothing is perfect, but people tend to be okay with that as long as it's professional. You know, make sure you're dressed, make sure your hair is combed, make sure you're, I can't recommend, you know, a grungy t-shirt and certainly not a t-shirt with something nasty on it. So don't do that, but get in, use the FaceTime. And I don't mean Apple FaceTime. I mean, get some FaceTime with people. For those of you who've ever done online dating, it doesn't take you long to figure out just how valuable FaceTime is because you get to know the person a whole lot better. For those of you who have grandchildren or grandparents who live far away, get on the camera. My folks I mentioned to you live in South Dakota, and my dad doesn't hear well. And a couple of months ago, I thought he really started really not hearing well. And from that day forward, I just FaceTime. And now he can look at me and he can read my lips. And oh my gosh, it makes for a really fun conversation because it's not, you know, hey, what are you doing? It's actual conversation. So find a way to get virtual, get in there. Instead of 90% email on there, we need to be seeing 90% virtual events. Websites for sure, but again, you got to drive people to your website. And so now you got to figure out a way to drive people to your website. And again, unless I really want to go to your website, I'm probably not going. And if you're asking me for money, I mean, when is the last time you guys went to the American Cancer Association website? Unless you have cancer or you're doing fundraising for them, you might not have been there. You've got to drive people there, and that's a challenge. Phone calls, would love to see that at 90%, not 10. We need the people thing. Here's one of the things I noticed last week at the grocery store. I went out to the grocery store. By then, a lot of people in Northern Virginia have slowed down. They're not going very often. Everybody's a little nervous. They're putting up the plexiglass, that kind of thing. So when I went in the grocery store, I needed to go to the bank, and the bank is in the grocery store. So I go to the bank and I start walking around the grocery store. And I just made it a point. This is probably the South Dakota in me, right? I made it a point to speak to every single person who works for the grocery store. I looked over the bakery counter and I said, good morning. And I see the produce man. I said, how are you today? And I see the seafood guy. I'm not buying seafood, but I say, good morning. How are you? You'd have thought I gave him $1,000. You would have thought that I gave them money. And what that tells me is people are hungry for the human connection. They are starving for the human connection. So instead of sending an email, or maybe in addition to sending the email, get on the phone. Back in the olden days when I was a child, before we had texting, before we all had cell phones, schools would use phone trees where one teacher would call 3 parents, those 3 parents would call 3 more parents, those 3 would call 3 more. And there was actually a human connection. It was neighborly and it made a difference. And we're in a world today where we need this. If you aren't using the live small meeting video, much like here with WebEx, go to Zoom, go to Adobe Connect, use WebEx, whatever it takes, but get into some one-on-one, even if it's just a one-on-one conversation or your team conversation, your champions, your physical emails, recorded videos. Some of you have recorded videos. Time to get those out to people, time to invite them to go to YouTube, time to make some YouTube videos. I do something where I create like little minute and a half videos and then put them in my emails so that people are still getting a little bit of a human connection, even though it's through an email. Send people to your YouTube page, whatever that is. In fact, if you go to my YouTube page, which is just Laurie Richards, if you go to my YouTube page, you'll find two things that might be of use to you guys. One is it's actually designed for the agricultural audience, but it addresses a lot of the same stuff. It talks about morale in tough times. So go to there and listen to that, because we're going to need this before it's all over, is morale building and finding a way to find that human connection and deal with navigating this chaos that we're going through. The other one that's out there that might be of interest to you folks is, what's the other one I was thinking would be good for you folks? If you go to, I do a podcast. And again, it's a podcast. It's called the Construction Leader Podcast, but it's really leadership skills that you can use for yourself as well. And there's one specifically in there about crisis communication. So just go to your Apple Podcast and search Construction Leader Podcast. You'll find it. Go in and find the one that's specifically about crisis management. And you'll find that on there. So there are a lot of things for you folks to think about as you do this, but all very important. Take advantage of that 30-minute complimentary strategy session we talked about. Abigail, can you go back to the other one? Let's talk about the results we have there, so we're making sure we've got what's worrying them. Okay. Yep, I thought we were going to see some of this. Diminishing contributions, we knew that was coming, right? So it means that we know we're going to lose a bit of it, but let's not lose any more than we have to. Lack of engagement with contributors. You've got to get on live. You've got to get on video. You've got to get on phone. Loss of a job. I knew that was going to be a concern. So just know that's where the morale building comes in. I will talk to Michaela. Maybe we can do one on morale building a little bit later so that we can talk about how we can manage our own morale through this. Shrinking eligible pool, weakening reputation, losing elections. Interesting that losing elections doesn't seem to be a concern of a lot of you. That's interesting to me. Can we make sure that these results get available to everybody after this? I'll just put that out to Abigail and Michaela and see if we can find a way to do that. But in the meantime, let's open this up to Q&A. Let's see what kind of questions you have and see how we can give you some answers here. What are you guys thinking? What are you worried? Well, I know now what you're worried about, but what are you thinking and how can I help in these last few minutes here? Seeing.
We have a couple in chat.
Okay.
With virtual events, how do you get people to them without an email?
Okay, I'm not going to tell you don't use email. I'm going to tell you it's not going to be the most effective thing that you can do. So if you're going to use email, make sure that it's a hard hitting email. And a lot of you are going to. So I'm not going to tell you don't use email, but you got to have some other things to help you through this. For every email you do, you got to do something else that really connects. So go ahead and use your email, but then turn around and add a little video to your email. In your email, send them to your website in a very obvious way. Not an email this long, folks. I know a lot of you like to write emails this long. So give them a hard heading. Think advertising, not a content piece. Make it look almost like an invitation to an experience, not an invitation to a meeting. An invitation to an experience. Make it very, very, very specific. You guys are here because of NABPAC. There are 100 webinars going on out there on how to be more effective in the remote environment. My God, I'm getting 100 emails a day on nothing but that. Be more effective in the remote environment. And if NABPAC hosts a webinar on being more effective, you'll be there because it's about you. So make that very, very, very tailored to them. Make sure you're following up with phone calls. Make sure that you're doing some of this prior to. We call them feeder events. So I'll go in for a client, for instance, and I will do a feeder event that's maybe a 15-minute video that we'll do like this, and then we'll send out the post recording, and all it'll be is just a little taste. You know me, the little pink spoon. You'll give them just a little taste of what they're getting, and then we'll see them tomorrow on the webinar. So we're using a variety of tools, not just the email. I'm reading this one, Abigail. It says, what are some good campaign themes, slogans, considering an election year in this current crisis? You know what? I haven't given a lot of thought to themes, so I'm not going to be able to come up with that on the fly, but I can certainly visit with you and your team, whoever asked that, looks like Jamie. And for those of you who are watching in this, respond to her question there in the chat box. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. What else do you have there, Abigail? Or who else has a question?
Yeah, we don't have anything in Slido yet, but if you have a question, just go to Slido and type in Crisis 2020. We will check those out.
I'm seeing one here that says we've been told to hold off and postpone the regular kinds of comms that we might do because the company is so focused on COVID. Not sure how to keep up with good communication while we're operating this way. Ideas. You know what? The first thing that I would do is send out something that says, guys, you need to know we're in control over here. And I don't mean just at the highest level. I mean every department head. Think about it. You guys are working from home. Some of you have received this phone call, some of you have not, but wouldn't it feel good to get the phone call that said, just checking in, want to make sure that you're okay there, and want you to know that I've been meeting with senior management and we're going to be okay. We got a lot of decisions to make, but the line of communication is always open. You know how to get a hold of me. Here are my office hours. Really looking forward to talking to you later, Susie. What can I do for you? Here are some resources that might be valuable to you. And what if they did that just to you and then they called every person in your department, 5 people in your department? Wouldn't that feel good? Wouldn't that make you feel like, oh, they actually care? Not only that, but wouldn't it make you feel confident that, you know what, this company is going to make it through this? This company is committed to making it through this. So some of those things that would ease your mind a little bit right now are some of the things that your eligibles need, and other stakeholders. Give them a call. But a call is worth so much more than an email, and so much more than an email that's just written to the general population. No, very tailored, very relatable, should have their name on it, should be just for them. Bob, I know that, your kids love to play soccer and they're not going to get to play soccer this summer. So I know that, really disappointing, but let's talk about how we can make sure that you can get to their games next year. I don't know, just anything that can make it real to them. One of the questions I'm seeing on here, Abigail, is any advice for groups whose members are losing revenue daily because of mandatory shutdowns like retail, restaurants, and hotels? You know what? I have one client that is purposely reaching out to its members to encourage them to buy the gift cards, pay it forward. And I have a member that specifically did a little video and said, you know what, guys, we're all in this together. And how about, this is what we're doing. We went out and we bought a bunch of gift cards to Starbucks, or actually she did it at a local coffee shop, not a Starbucks, good, bad, or indifferent. But she said, I think we need to support our local folks. So here's what I did. If you're doing this, if you're not doing it, consider doing it. If you're doing it, let's talk about it. And then make sure that people know about it. Not in a toot your own horn kind of the way, but in an absolute, just an FYI, here's an effort we have going. I have a client that works in construction that put out a request for construction companies who happen to have masks, because a lot of them use masks for the kind of work that they do to prevent the dust or the paint or whatever's going on. And she got a huge response. And if she had never asked, she'd have never been able to do that. And then she shared that with other members, with other chapters, and with people in her community. Again, not in a way that says, aren't we special, but just in a way of, here's another idea, here's how we can here's how we can help. So if you can do things, be sure to do those. And it's good to hear that you guys are thinking about folks like that, especially if your members are folks like that. Don't be afraid to put together Facebook groups where they can talk to one another. Groups, even virtual, happy hours where they can talk to each other about sharing ideas. This one says, we're doing a small newsletter and personally connecting with people via phone and personal note, via mail, just reaching out. I think that is so wise to be doing. Looks like that's from Nicole. I think that's really wise. People will care that you're doing that. The same way those folks at the grocery store cared that someone looked them in the eye, instead of ignoring them and just walking past and assuming they were doing their job. So I think every chance that we have, every opportunity that we have to connect with people is going to make a difference. I'm reading another one that says, what if you have a particularly heavy concentration of colleagues in New York or other hotspots? I feel like they're still in the bottom of Pavlov's hierarchy of needs. it's Maslow's, but yes, not focused on anything other than safety and health. Yes, you're right. And when people are, and DC is going to be there. I just don't have any question. That's Laurie talking, not Dr. Fauci. So sorry about that. I have no authority and I have no credibility, but it's just a feeling for me that Washington as a metro area, I won't be surprised at all if we get stuck into that. But it's going to be the only thing you can do right there is we're here for you. It is just know that we're thinking about you and really remembering that they are in survival mode. That is not the time to ask them for $50, certainly, but it is the time to tell them we're thinking about you. Let me know if we can help you. We want you to know that we're here to help, that kind of a thing. It's the best you can do. You guys, in bad times, you need to communicate. In crisis times, you must communicate. Let me know how I can help. Abigail or Michaela, can you let them know how they can how they can get my email to reach out for that 30-minute, because I'm happy to help them with that. Michaela, I think it's on the last, there you go. On that last slide, there you go. There's the email. You guys just get on my calendar. I'm happy to help you out, you or your team, and just help guide you through this, help ask you questions that give you the answers to what you need in order to make your way through this. We really are all in this together. Let me know.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Really appreciate your time today. I want to thank everybody for participating. Just as a reminder, we will recap today's webinar as soon as the recording is downloaded. We will send out that recap. We will provide the slides that were presented today with the recording. We will also include Laurie's contact information, but as always, you can email us at nabpac.org. And we will get you in touch with Laurie. So with that, thank you all for your time today. And thank you again, Laurie, for your fantastic presentation today.
Certainly happy to help. Just sorry we have to. Please let me know how I can help further.
Great. Thanks, Laurie. Stay safe and healthy, everybody. Take care.